we are sounding the viral video. A big round of applause for Winnie the Clown!
The acts you're about to see are real. There are no deals, no tricks, no cheats. Do not try.
I was actually terrified of clowns most of my life. I mean, so much so that when I told my dad that I was a clown, his response very promptly was, "No, you're not." I did not get into the world of clown until I went to college. It was 2011, I believe. There's a very prominent clown community at my university, UC Irvine. One of our professors, Eli Simon, actually developed his own clowning technique based on his experience from mass work and Commedia dell'arte. And it's a hugely popular class there. So, I saw the clowns and how they were different and not terrifying to me. And I always tend to get pigeonholed outside of clowning as a dramatic actress. So it was very important to me as an artist to find out how I could be funny. So I took the class and I just ended up falling way more in love with it than I anticipated.
Hello and welcome to episode 38 of Share a Slice with Sean. I'm Sean McGuire. On this episode, I'd like to introduce Krystal Pohaku, whose stage name is Winnie the Clown. Now here's a slightly adapted bio, originally taken from Freakshow Deluxe's webpage. Winnie the Clown was found wandering Hollywood's Theater Row by the Reverend Vincent Wolf in 2012. She began as a humble card girl at his Boom Bam Pow show, but quickly developed an appetite for steel and debuted her sword-swallowing skills shortly thereafter at Circus Maximus's 2013 Dia de los Muertos extravaganza. Ever since, she has been gleefully gliding down a slippery sideshow slope through tennis rackets, over shards of broken glass, onto beds of nails, into boxes riddled with blades, and much, much more. Winnie is a proud member of Freakshow Deluxe and the resident sideshow artist at Bearded Lady's Mystic Museum in Burbank, California. She's appeared on BuzzFeed, Investigation Discovery, True Nightmares, and even a short film called Spydora. So without further ado, here's my interview with Krystal. So, Krystal, thanks so much for being on the show.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
You've done a lot. That's quite the bio.
Yeah. I don't feel like I've done a lot, especially since I think I'm very much at the beginning of my career. Yeah, reading it back to me, it does feel like quite a bit. I have a lot of that to thank Freakshow Deluxe for. The Reverend Vincent Wolf, when I met him, was the vice president of Freakshow Deluxe. And at the time, I was, just very much looking up to him as a mentor and not looking to become part of his company in any way. But then, I don't know, maybe a year or two later, I ended up joining. So in many ways, Freakshow Deluxe has had a huge impact on myself as an artist.
So you joined the Freakshow Deluxe in 2012. I mean, what were you doing before 2012? Were you into performing back then even?
Yeah, I've actually been on stage since I was 4.5 years old. I started out dancing. When I got into middle school, I started acting. It had always been something that I was interested in. I'd done a little bit in choir, but for the most part, it was something that my mom's a very supportive person, but I think until she saw me act, she didn't realize how serious or good I was at it. But after that first performance, she was like, you can do whatever you want to do.
And then we have the Circus Maximus 2013. That was basically the sort of Day of the Dead extravaganza.
Yeah, they had 2 shows back to back that weekend, and I went as a patron, as an audience member the first night. I met the producer and now my good friend Bean just outside after the show. We got to talking, and he asked me, do you want to work tomorrow night? And that's how I got my very first gig as a sword swallower and a clown. Actually, that kind of gave birth to the idea of my clown swallowing swords.
So I look at that and I'm like, wow. I mean, how is that even done? Does she straighten herself out a certain way? I mean, is it all about relaxing your muscles?
Yeah, it is very much muscle control, because what you're doing is working against, your survival instinct, essentially, to dull your reflexes. So a lot of people I've talked to kind of describe it as almost a meditative state of mind for those few seconds. You just kind of drop in to a very relaxed state where you have control over those very small reflex muscles and just tell them to chill out for a few minutes.
You have to sort of like zone out, I guess, and just block things out, I guess, and just enter in sort of your peaceful place.
Yeah, definitely. Breathing for me personally is a huge part of my sword swallowing technique. It really helps me, because I don't get nervous anymore necessarily going on stage, but there are definitely nights where I might feel a little more anxious for whatever reason, and it definitely helps to kind of set a rhythm and a pattern to my work. And a lot of the times, like if I am feeling less than great on stage, that's the moment at which I finally kind of feel things start to go right. Just kind of connects me and my work and the audience all at once.
Well, actually, one more thing about the sword swallowing. So, I mean, how long did it take you to learn to do this? And do they start you out with like little daggers or rods or something?
So there are a couple of schools of thought. Lots of people believe that you should start with a wire hanger. And the idea is that you bend it straight so that it resembles a sword in shape. Other people think that that's a terrible idea and you should just start with a sword. Personally, I started with a wire hanger. I want to say it took me 48 hours to get the hanger down. Maybe another week or two to get comfortable with it. And from that point on, it was just a matter of I was saving money to buy my first sword. And I want to say that took me maybe 5 or 6 months. And once I got my sword, it only took me maybe a week or two to get it down, and maybe a month more than that to really get comfortable with it. Some people it takes years to get that far. I guess I'm just either very lucky or very determined.
I can just really picture you sitting in a room somewhere or in your spare time and just like putting your head back and sticking this coat hanger down your throat.
Yeah, I actually had 2 roommates at the time, and one of them has a very sensitive gag reflex. But there were definitely times where she would be in the next room or walk in and she'd be like, oh God, she's doing it again. It was a very special time in my life where I would wake up, brush my teeth, swallow a hanger, eat breakfast, swallow a hanger, go to work, go to lunch, swallow a hanger, come back from work, swallow it again, eat dinner, swallow a hanger, and then 2 more times before I go to bed. So it was a huge part of my day. I would take it to work. Everyone at work would either make fun of me or watch in awe or laugh or turn away.
Yeah.
Those are the days.
Are there special swords that you use? I mean, I'm thinking that the point is probably pointy, but that the actual cutting blades on either side must not be sharp. Otherwise, you would literally slice yourself up, even if it touched the sides of your throat.
Yeah, our swords are not sharpened, or if they have been sharpened, they're usually dulled. I mean, I can't speak for everyone in the sword swallowing community, but that has been my experience. But there's still very much a huge danger element every time, because the esophagus, the lining is not very thick. It does not take a whole lot to tear it or puncture it. The same goes for the lining of your stomach. Less often, but it does still happen even to people who are very experienced there is the chance that you can put it down the wrong way and it would go into your lungs. And nobody wants that either.
Oh,
Yeah.
no kidding. You also, in addition to this, you actually fit your body through a tennis racket, which is, I can't even imagine that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I remember the first time that Tommy, our Reverend Tommy Gunn at Freakshow Deluxe, he asked me, "Can you fit your body through a tennis racket?" And I looked at the tennis racket. I was like, "Well, we're about to find out." And I've always been very flexible, naturally being a dancer, but that was a huge sense of accomplishment when I finished putting that act together for Freakshow Deluxe. It's probably one of my favorite acts now, actually.
You also do Bed of Nails, I read as well.
Yes, I do. I just finally got my very own bed. So Bed of Nails so far has been something that I have only performed in a group setting. So Winnie does not have her own Bed of Nails act as of yet, but now that I have my own bed, that can all change. So that's one of the things that I'm going to be working on in the months to come. But other things that I do are glass walking. And Winnie also likes to walk on Lego sometimes.
I've done that.
Mouse trap.
Uh-huh.
Another one for any listeners who don't know what that means within the sideshow world. Essentially, you close a mouse trap on a part of your body. Usually it will be my tongue. The box of blades. Yeah, which I only perform with Freakshow Deluxe.
How does that work?
Very carefully. So there is a beautiful, pretty small coffin-shaped box. It is filled with lots of slots we have 3 different kinds of blades. We have hardwood blades, saws, and machetes that are not just sharp. They're sharp on one side and serrated on the other. So Winnie goes into the box, followed by these 13 blades of 3 different kinds, and somehow manages to wiggle her way around them all.
Yeah, that would have me on the edge of my seat if I were there.
Yep. A lot of people think it's a magic trick, but it's not. So that's actually the part of the show where we let the audience come up and become part of the show, walk on stage, look into the box of doom, and then go on their merry way.
Have you ever had any close calls on any of these performances? Let's say, I don't know, maybe while you were swallowing swords, you kind of lost your mojo, or you were distracted suddenly, or scared, or startled, or maybe you were in the box and something went wrong. I don't know, you sneezed or jerked or something.
So far, I have been very lucky not to have had any real scares. There have been moments where things haven't gone as well as I wanted them to, or even moments where maybe I didn't think I was going to get a sword down, but I've always just, gone back to the beginning, taken a breath, and started over, and it's always ended up all right. Big thing is not to force it.
Yeah, I can only imagine. It's not the sort of thing you want to do.
No, nobody wants a punctured esophagus.
No.
Solo is a very special lady. She believes that actions speak louder than words. And if that's true, and we believe it is, you are going to want to hear everything that Solo doesn't say.
And you've been in 2 movie productions. The first one that I have here is Spydora. Is that the way you say it, Spydora?
Yes, exactly. Spydora, the act that the movie is named for, is this wonderful illusion where you have a girl. Usually she'd be in a mask, so, if she was walking around the carnival, you wouldn't recognize her. And she would put her head into this illusion that gave her a spider body. And, usually the audience could interact with her and ask her questions, and she'd fire back with witty remarks. So this movie was about a girl who was also a lobster girl. She had these lobster-looking hands, and she always felt like she was a freak, in a very real sense. Like she was an outcast, like she was ugly and unaccepted. But this one audience member keeps coming back to her shows and falls in love with her. And it's a really sweet story about how they find each other. So I got to, of course, clown as one of her sideshow friends in this film. It's directed and written by Fred Olen Ray, who he's one of those directors that you don't know, but you've probably seen his work. It was the first time that I got to let my passion for sideshow interact with my love for film. So that was a really amazing experience. And, for the first time being able to clown and swallow swords on film is also a huge challenge because I am very much used to doing these things in front of a live audience and feeding off of that energy. So it was really the first time that I had to search within myself only to find that energy, especially because, being on set, all the crew, as much as they may want to laugh, they can't.
I'm not comparing you to Spydora or anything, but I watched this BuzzFeed video where it was actually your boyfriend. You guys met on Facebook and then you invited him to your show and then he saw that.
Kind of. It was, so we're both actors, but of course they don't want to tell stories about actors meeting. So what really happened was that we got cast across one another in a mutual friend's short film, and the chemistry was ridiculous. There's a whole crazy story. I was with someone else at the time and yada, yada, yada. Anyway, so eventually he starts talking to me on Facebook, and he saw that I had gone to a circus, and he was like, "Hey, so you in it?" And I was like, "No, but you should go." And he goes, "I don't want to come unless you're in it. I would come to see you." So that's the point at which I invited him to one of my shows, and the BuzzFeed video is pretty accurate from that point on.
Oh, it's cute. It's a cute video. I'm going to put a link to it, definitely.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah.
And your other movie, it's not really a movie. It is a movie. It's a collection of, I guess, trailers for grindsploitation type movies, grindhouse type movies, and it's called Grindsploitation.
Between the years 1967 and 1996, behind the steel bars of Raisindale's maximum security insane asylum, a group of more than 30 inmates were given cameras, a fistful of quarters, and the freedom to express themselves within the medium of film. That film would later be buried, and now, in 2016, that film is unleashed to the general public. Welcome to Grindsploitation, the movie. Viewer discretion is advised.
Yep. I forget how I got in contact with the director, Caleb Emerson. I think he may have just come to see one of my shows. So I get this message that's like, "Hey, do you want to be in a fake trailer in this movie?" And it has something to do with John Waters. So I show up to this venue that I've performed at too many times, where we're filming, and I have absolutely no idea what I'm getting myself into. And it just got weirder and weirder because we were filming a very specific portion of this larger trailer that was going to go into this movie. And I didn't even really, I don't think I knew what it was about entirely until I saw the finished product. But so at one point we're running away from something, another we're standing in front of a green screen just yelling random words, and there was a point at which some older man was I think his character was supposed to have been like getting a blowjob, and he was asking like, "Who's your burger, baby?" There was a dead girl involved. Like, it was just such a disorienting but fantastic experience. I wish I had a better way to describe it, but if the rest of the movie is anything else, anything like what we did, which I'm sure it is, it will be very interesting. I think the idea was to put together like a compilation of these fake movie trailers that were kind of an interesting phenomena. I may be misinformed, but I think that's how Machete got made.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound? Yeah. So like that was kind of the jumping off point.
This clowning technique, there are many different kinds of clowning technique, because for me, when I grew up, and also when I go to kids' parties, I guess maybe I'm missing some of it, or maybe they're not practicing various techniques. They're just sort of twisting balloons and, doing games with the kids. I mean, is there more to it than that? Oh,
yes. There's so much more to it than face paint and crazy costumes and twisting balloons. And that, I think, is probably where a lot of the misconception of what a clown is and the fear of clowns even comes from. Clowning is very much about physical comedy. I've had conversations with certain clowns before. I say clowns in quotation marks there, who have told me that clowns are comedians with red noses. And I cannot stress how much I disagree with that. In fact, in our technique of Simonian clowning, we begin not speaking. One of the rules is that you do not speak. Some clowns later develop the ability to talk. But the reason why is that it forces you to focus on the physicality of your clown and the physical comedy that comes from, being very open and vulnerable. In that way, you don't allow yourself to rely on jokes,
I probably told you that I grew up kind of afraid of clowns. My parents gave me this creepy doll when I was a kid.
Oh, no.
I don't know if you know about these old dolls, but the head was hard plastic, and the nose was just this cherry red, and you twisted the nose and it played this music at you. It would just sit in my room and stare at me at night. It was scary.
Yeah, I just got the very physical chill down my spine at that description.
Tell me a little bit about this creepy clown thing. I mean, when it comes to, cinema and even the news lately.
Yeah, I've actually noticed in the last 5 years of being a clown that obviously in general movies aren't great to us, the media is not great to us, but every couple of years it seems like this weird thing starts happening outside of film, where people just decide they want to scare people. And the first time it happened, after I started identifying, more with clown, I was kind of offended, and it worried me as far as getting work and just, giving clowns a bad name. And that's definitely a problem. But I noticed this time around this year when it started happening, I just felt tired and angry, and even a little frustrated with some of the people in the clown community, because I think the thing that made it most angering for me was there was a group of clowns that started using the hashtag Clown Lives Matter. And to me, that's infuriating. As, a woman of color and an ally to my Black friends, I think that is hugely offensive, because as clowns, yes, we get a lot of hate for various reasons, but we can take our clown faces off at any moment and be safe again, but our Black friends, they cannot. These are identities that they wear all the time. And I was so incredibly saddened to see such a huge acceptance of something so terrible by our community. I guess it's, one of those ways in which people don't, consciously recognize the privilege that they have. And they don't think about how that affects other people who are less privileged.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree.
Yeah, I think the media has not been kind to clowns. I think clowns are a great vehicle for creating villains, in that, we have this idea as a society that they are there to entertain you and thereby, make you comfortable and disarm you, making you vulnerable. And, whether you're talking about becoming physically vulnerable to, a killer behind this mask of a clown, or whether you're, on, I guess, a deeper level, emotionally vulnerable, that can be a very, uncomfortable place for a lot of people. It, I think, is a great example of what I was, kind of talking about, because everyone associates the monster with the clown. My clown, Winnie, she's very disarming. And actually, I get a lot of people coming up to me saying, like, I hate clowns, but you're awesome.
Yeah, and, to be honest, just looking at your picture and some of your shows, it does look kind of almost cartoon-like. Like, I look at you, and you're almost like an animaniac, almost.
I love that that's what you think of. Thank you so much. That is such a huge compliment.
Do you have any future plans? Are you working on improving your act any?
Oh, always. So my big things right now are kind of getting back to creating new clown material. I feel like in the past 2 years, it's just been kind of like a whirlwind of working and getting work. But now I kind of have more of a steady rhythm. I have things that I do every year, and I don't have to worry so much about like hustling to network. I mean, it's always good to network, but I don't have to like actively worry about it. So I think this might be the year that I finally get to sit down and balance things out as far as the ratio of performance to creation of new material, which I've been missing a lot. I've kind of been doing the same 3 or 4 acts, which, those are what people know and there's demand for, but I want to put some new stuff out for me. And then also I've been working on upping my sword swallowing game, as always, and adding 1 more sword. So right now I can swallow, or I have been swallowing 2 swords. Now I can do 3, trying to figure out, how to incorporate my clown work into that. And also, at what point is it appropriate to debut those skills?
I have a couple of questions that I ask most guests on the show, and I guess they're a little cheesy. Since your beginning as a performer and right up to this point, are there any highlights or are there any sort of lessons that you've learned that you could let us know about in the performing industry and maybe even in life in general?
I think the biggest thing that I have learned, and I learned this from, I'm going to give myself a little credit, mostly from myself, but it was brought to my conscious mind by a professor of dance at UC Irvine. Her name is Loretta Livingston. She's a beautiful human being and a beautiful dancer. To really meet yourself at your work and do it with a friendly attitude. No one's perfect. Things are going to go wrong. You're going to have bad days, bad shows, bad whatever it is you do. But no matter what, meet yourself at your work with friendliness. If you don't, then I think it's really difficult to, continue doing good work, because you'll always be tearing yourself down and second guessing yourself.
Amen. I totally agree. So, Krystal, thanks so much for being on the show. I mean, it's been lots of fun talking to you.
Likewise. Thank you so much again for having me.
Well, that's about it for this episode. I hope you've enjoyed the interview with Krystal and learned more about sword swallowing and clowns. I'd like to thank Krystal for being on the show, and I invite you to follow her on her Facebook page. Just search for Winnie the Clown. You may have also noticed a large gap between this episode and the last one. In fact, this interview was recorded in December. It's mainly because the McGuire clan has fallen victim to colds, flus, and even gastro over the past few weeks, and it really hasn't been pretty. It's been our own version of grindsploitation film around here, so have no fear, more episodes are on their way. As always, the intro and outro music is by Kromatiks Music, and it's used with permission. And the music that plays while I'm doing Winnie's intro piece is by my good high school friend Matt McClellan, otherwise known as Counterpoint, and I'll be providing a link to his SoundCloud page in the show notes. The clip introducing Winnie herself was graciously provided by Krystal. The clip following is from a live recording of a Freakshow Deluxe show, and there will be a link to that in the show notes. The clip introducing Krystal's character named Solo is from the movie Spydora, an 8-legged love story, and it's used with permission from Fred Olen Ray himself. The short clip from Grindsploitation, the movie, is used with permission from Body Bag Films. For both of these films, check the show notes out for links over at shareaslicepodcast.com. You can also subscribe to the podcast at shareaslicepodcast.com using your Apple or Android phone. You can also listen to past episodes using the web player there as well. As always, remember you can do me a big favor by leaving a 5-star rating or a review over at iTunes. So thanks so much for listening, and I hope you'll be back next time.